YouTube. And Eric, I don't know if you're able to, but if you could, double check me on Facebook with the sound.
Well, my tablet's in my room, and I just walked in my house.
Oh, that's fine then.
Yep.
I think we should be all right. I don't think we should have any problem. I'm gonna go over there and check it. But yeah, I think we should be all right. Couple things I want to talk about today. And Eric, I'm gonna mute you real quick.
Go ahead.
So have you guys seen where, I don't know how many of you read To Kill a Mockingbird in school? It's about a trial down in Mississippi, and I can't forgive me, I don't remember. Alabama. No, I thought it was I don't know why I thought it was Mississippi. Is it Alabama? It is Alabama. It's in, tell me the place, the city in
Southern
Alabama.
Macomb County.
What was the city?
Macomb County.
Macomb County. But you said a city though with that, didn't you?
Just the county.
Okay. So, can't remember the exact details of the trial, but I know it was racially involved. I believe it was to do with a lynching. If I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong, but regardless, they are looking to ban that in schools around the country, usually in high school. Is it high school or middle school? I read that book. One of those, it's a mandatory reading. Macomb, Alabama, Ray Bexley says, yes. So, again, it's been a while since I read the book, but I do know the broad details of it. But they're looking to get rid of this book. Now, I was watching Joy read. When I watch Joy read, I got to be very bored and not have a lot that I think I'm going to discuss on the podcast. I'm just looking for material. But, and the same thing with The View, because I got this topic from them today. They are pinning this on Republicans. I'm not sure what the details are of who's banning what. If it's Republicans, Democrats, whatever. What I want to say about it is I disagree. We should not ban any of these books, ever. What they're saying, though, what they're saying that Republicans are trying to do is they're making it to where, they don't want white people to feel bad about things that happened in the past. They're trying to throw it in the same argument with critical race theory, and it's not the same argument. There's a difference between teaching history and teaching something like critical race theory. We should not filter or ban history as it is, especially U.S. history. What I think the United States does a very good job of, for the most part, at least from when I was growing up and in school, in elementary school, and I went to a private school for a few years in elementary school, so maybe I got more of it there in a good way. But the United States does a great job of teaching history. Our children are a lot further ahead in regards to history than other children around the world. My girlfriend from Australia literally is not even on the same level history. I knew more about Australian history than she did. And I think that we do a good job, but now we're starting to go downhill. We're starting to go along with where these other countries are and what they're doing. And we need to stop. We need to stop. If it's Republicans or Democrats or whoever is banning these books, we're banning it because we don't like a certain word in the book. Really? There's a line. I do draw a line with, kids being uncomfortable with words in a book. There's definitely a fine line between that and what critical race theory is teaching. The problem with critical race theory is it's pinning a specific group of people out to be bad. Critical race theory is focusing on how only white people can be racist and how white people are the problems behind race. teaching about slavery or American history and racial issues and, civil rights, stuff like that, is way different. Yes, were white people, the reason for a lot of that in the United States? Yes. But what they also don't want to teach, for whatever reason, is that I think the largest slave owner in the United States was black. And another very large slave owner was Cherokee Indian. It wasn't just white people in the United States that owned slaves. That's the difference. Critical race theory is saying it's black versus white, and teaching history in the proper way is teaching it undiscriminatory. They're teaching it how it happened and not trying to form ideas. They're just teaching it. To ban a book, it doesn't matter if it's DeSantis or, in Florida or a Republican person in Mississippi or whoever, a Democrat, whatever. To start banning books, I have a serious problem with it. We're going down a bad road. To start saying we're not going to teach about slavery is bad. But when you do teach it, you need to teach it properly. You need to say that, yes, the majority of slave owners were white, but there were black slave owners. There were Cherokee Indian. There were not just Cherokee Indian. There were other Native American slave owners. Here's the other thing. When we teach about Native American tribes, and if we want to teach about things like the Trail of Tears and stuff like that, I'm fine with that. That is 100% fine. We need to know all that. But don't forget to throw in that the Native Americans were also taking each other's land and killing each other and fighting battles against each other's tribes long before the white man got here. They were doing the same thing to each other that the white men did to them. And it's just history. It is what it is. It's not, it's just, you learn from it. There's a reason why. I think there was another book other than To Kill a Mockingbird. It was, is it Cats or Mice? Something like that. It's about the Holocaust. Mice, I think it is. It's about the Holocaust. They're looking at banning that. Now, Mouse, M-A-U-S, yes, right back, see? Mouse. It's about the Holocaust. We don't need to censor that. We need to learn that. Our children need to learn that. I am, and I know some people will disagree with this, but I actually am probably more along the lines of, I'm fine with my kids watching graphic war movies for history in school. Show them Saving Private Ryan. Whatever. That's probably one of the most accurate war movies there are, as far as what war is, like how it is portrayed. The story's not, it's a fictional story, but, it's real events. Like, I'm fine with that. There's another movie about the Civil War, Gods and Generals. Great movie. It's like 4 hours. We should show them that. That's how you learn. So what? It's graphic. It's real. We want to teach people how to have sex in school. We want to teach them how to have an abortion. We want to say it's okay for them to cut their dicks off and change what their gender and identify as whatever, but we don't. Now we want to censor them with history and real things that make a difference. We want to ban a book because it has the N-word in it, or we want to ban a book because it talks about the Holocaust. And part of the problem is the people that like The View, they actually agreed with me on this. And Joy Reid agreed with me on this, but the reasonings for agreeing with me made no sense. And Joy Reid actually put herself in a hole when she said that the Holocaust wasn't about race. She made it, and she, quote, I kid you not, she said, the Holocaust wasn't about race. It was about...
Whoopi.
Yeah, Whoopi. Who did I say? Did I say Joy Reid?
You said Joy Reid.
Oh, no, yeah, I meant Whoopi Goldberg,
yeah.
On The View, yeah, I meant Whoopi Goldberg. She said that it wasn't about race. It was about what was it? Humanity. Basically, like people doing bad things to other people. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, didn't Hitler kill black people? Didn't Hitler kill everyone that wasn't Christian? Pretty much. Like, he killed gypsies, Jews, Gentiles, freaking black people. It didn't matter. Gays, straight, he killed them all. If you weren't perfect, what he wanted, I think he got rid of you.
Hitler had the belief that Germans should be a pure race, but what people don't realize was Hitler was not a pure German. He was born in Vienna, Austria,
Mm-hmm.
and I think history would probably question like whether his time as chancellor was even legal.
Ooh, say that again. I kind of missed that last part.
Some would wonder if Hitler's time as German chancellor was even legal, considering he was not a natural-born German. He was born in Vienna, Austria.
Well, he wasn't the chancellor. He was just a dictator, I think. I don't think he actually qualified as a chancellor, did he? Was that his title?
I believe that was his title. At the time, yes.
Well,
he was not the president of Germany, because a chancellor in Germany is going to be like the head of state, like
it's
our
like the prime
president of the
minister,
United States, or the prime minister in England and what have you. And
well, they kind of ran into the same thing that the Russians did just before the Bolshevik Revolution. With you had Tsar Nicholas, and they took him out of power, or he really stepped down, but they were going to force him out of power, and they did a transition of power and tried to protect him. Obviously, they didn't do a very good job, if anyone knows that story. Anastasia, if you've seen the Disney movie, that's all that's about. But it didn't end well, just so you know. But there was the same kind of deal with Germany there with Hitler, because they had what'd they call him? What was the monarch in Germany called? Damn it, Ray Bexley. Come on, I know you know this. You know all the books. But they transitioned that person out of power too. Now I think they exiled him. Hitler had him exiled. I don't think he killed him. But it's gonna come to me. It's the same kind of deal. However, those are the things. Well, I was just looking for the title, not the face. I was looking for the title. There's a name. It's not the Chancellor. It's not the Tsar. That's in Russia. It's similar. It'd be like the King or the Tsar. But the German one was called. Damn it! It's bothering me now that I can't think of it. But censorship. We're really going down a slippery slope. We're really going down a slippery slope. We're going to have children that don't know how to learn this stuff. And I just it bothers me. If you have people that are uncomfortable, like To Kill a Mockingbird, it has the N-word in it. If someone's uncomfortable, don't read it out loud in class. Take it home and read it, but make them read it and give them tests on the book. Or have them read it silently in class. Or have the teacher read it out loud to them and discuss the book. Don't, whatever. You can get around not saying a word in the book if that's what you need to do. But don't censor history and just get rid of a book because you don't like certain things in it. Because history is not nice. There's not a lot of good in human history. There is, but for the most part, the stuff that you want to learn about, and the reason why we learn history is so we don't repeat it. Like, if we didn't know what happened in the Holocaust, and all the bad things Hitler did, or all the bad things that Russia did, and what the communists have done, there'd be a lot more communists in this world, there'd be a lot more Nazis in this world. That's the stuff that you want to try and avoid. So, I have a problem with this road we're going down, and I haven't looked at who's specifically doing what, who's putting this legislation into place. When you listen to Joy Reid and Whoopi Goldberg and all them, they say that it's Republicans. I don't see DeSantis doing that. What they are saying, though, in Florida in the legislation that they don't want people to feel uncomfortable about their race when they're teaching history. Now, again, you're walking a fine line, but I think what they're going down is they're mixing it up with critical race theory. I've talked about critical race theory a few different times on the show. My problem with critical race theory, not only are they just pinning it all on white people and all that, but it's actually derives from the Communist Manifesto critical theory, and it's a critique of capitalism. They're actually they have a different agenda on top of the whole race thing with critical race theory. There's a much deeper cause, and it's getting away from the capitalism and going towards communism. That's my problem with critical race theory, my biggest problem with it. So, yeah, we don't need to be teaching critical race theory. Critical race theory is bad. As of right now, I don't think many schools actually teach that. I think it's kind of over-exaggerated. But there are some that do, and they don't need to be teaching it. But we need to teach, when it comes to American history, we need to teach everything. From the time they start, the freaking kindergarten, we need to teach it. And then world history, too, on top of that. The other thing, today starts Black History Month, and I brought up To Kill a Mockingbird, but I don't agree with Black History Month. I think this is a common opinion, too, among black people as well. Who are we to narrow their history down to 1 month? Hell, that sounds racist in itself. They're a part of our history. You teach it as it comes. Who cares if it's February, March, April, August, June, whatever? It doesn't matter. What, so we're just going to teach about George Washington Carver and all the great things that he provided us, utilizing peanuts and stuff like that? All the, different people, MLK, we're just going to throw them all in 1 month. There's been a lot of black people that have contributed to the American culture in the world, and we're just going to narrow it down to a month. Whoever thought of that was like, oh, we're just going to make you feel good. We're just going to make it February, the shortest fucking month, all about you. Here you go, black people. 28 days. 29 days every 4 years. So we'll throw an extra day in there for Malcolm X or someone. That's not cool. Just teach it as it comes up. They don't have Irish History Month. Why? Because Irish people are just a part of American history, just like black people are. That's where it's just teach that shit. It's simple. Don't shy away from it. Don't be indifferent towards it, though. Don't teach it with an opinion. Just teach the facts. Just teach what happened. Don't say that, all Southerners that fought for the Confederate Army in the Civil War were bad people. No, that's not true. In fact, there are black people that fought for the Confederate Army. There are Indians, Native Americans that fought for the Confederate Army. It may seem unbelievable, but there are. That's just truth. That's fact. But they don't teach you that. They need to. So, I just, that kind of bothers me. Now, Eric, let me know on Facebook if I'm having issues. I'm getting warnings, but just let me know if that video is going smooth or not, if you could. But my next thing I want to talk about, I think I've mentioned, I'm in the middle of writing an article on election fraud. And election fraud with the 2020 presidential election is not something I really dive into a whole lot, and I try to remain neutral on it. Again, I have my opinion, but I don't ever relay that personal opinion. I just say that, I'm open to hear any theories on it, but you got to accept the results, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's rigged or not, but I am writing an article about a theory I have that if it were stolen, how could it have been done, realistically? I have a theory about how it could have been done, and so far I think my theory is proving correct. But I have a lot of questions, and I like actually bringing up topics that I write about on the show because it helps me write more about them, get past that writer's block, but it also, when people call in, may, give me a different perspective too. But I'm going to go through this, and so if I ask questions and I sound like I'm talking to myself, anyone feel free to chime in and offer their opinion on it. But, you know, I'm at a point where I have a lot of data, but he said, come on, NDM said, come on. Oh, he said, give us questions. Yeah. Well, so I'll just get into it. My theory, if the election were to be stolen, and the state I'm focusing on is Georgia, it's really hard for me to go outside of one state because all the states publish all of the election data, and there's a lot of it. I'm just one person. But I focused on Georgia, and I started this actually last year, or not, right after the election, and I restarted it now. And I went all the way back to 1992, which was the last time Georgia went blue. They voted for Bill Clinton. And I'm looking at tendencies. My theory was that if you were going to do it, you had to do it in Trump-heavy counties, smaller to medium-sized Trump-heavy counties. Biden won by like 11,500 votes in the state of Georgia. Not very many votes. I don't know how many counties there are in Georgia, but there are several. And
159 counties total.
There you go. I love it, Eric. 159 counties. So, Eric, if you could also maybe do this math or someone, 159 counties to get to 11,500 votes. How many votes would that be per county? Just divide 11,500 to 159. What would that give you? That'd be 100, 110, 115, I think. Just shy of 115 votes per county. So that's it. That's not very much. Now, what I'm noticing is that Trump actually gained ground percentage-wise in counties like, not Fulton, but some of these Democratic-heavy counties. He actually did a little bit better than was expected. But in some of these Trump-heavy counties, when I say Trump-heavy, I'm talking about that Trump earned at least 65% of the vote. Biden gained crazy ground as far as his proportionate share of the vote. When I say crazy ground, and if I get too complicated with the statistics lingo, sorry. But going back every year, and you look at the Democrats' proportionate share of votes. So that means if you look at a county and the Democrat usually gets 25% of the vote, Republican usually gets 75% of the vote, right? You look at the percentage. I averaged those up for every election other than this past one. What I find, and then I get an average, and then I look at the standard deviations, which is how far from the average each election could sway. And I found that Joe Biden was outside of a 2 standard deviation move from the average in some of these counties. 2 standard deviations, 95%. There's a 95% probability that any result in that election and all the data and any outcome falls in between a 2 standard deviation move from the average. That means there's a 95% chance you're not going to go that far away from the average, right? Joe Biden in multiple counties was past that. So he exceeded, he got that 5% chance, and actually maybe higher than 95%, but he actually, that's like winning a high scratch-off lottery ticket. Because the other kicker to this is that in some of these counties, they had 30 to 40% more votes than they did the previous year. But they've had a declining population every year. Now, how's that work? So people say, well, you could always come up back and say, well, more people went and registered to vote because it was an important election. Here's what we think about when we think of the election fraud. Here's some different ways everyone thinks. So the mail-in ballots or the absentee ballots is the number one thing. the Dominion voting machines, could they have been rigged? Whatever. People voting twice, dead people voting, possibly. Maybe illegals voting. Maybe votes weren't counted for a particular party. Eric says you may have had suburban middle class GOP and independent voters reluctantly vote for Biden or stayed home. A fraud didn't occur at the ballot box. It occurred with big tech entities being a major influencer. D'Souza's new 2000 Mules documentary film promises to expose voter fraud on the heels of Pennsylvania drop box system being ruled unconstitutional. Eric, so I agree with part of that statement. The problem is, now here's where I'm getting into the questions part. Here's what I got to answer. I wish I could pull it up, but I'm not going to. So here's some questions that I ask. Here's what I found is that, was Biden a more popular candidate than Hillary Clinton and Obama? Because he outperformed both of them. You're telling me that Georgia, which has a large black population, Joe Biden was more popular than Barack Obama. There's no way. And that's not just Barack Obama in the second term. That's Barack Obama in both terms. There's no way. Joe Biden also picked a running mate that was extremely unpopular in the Democratic primaries. No one liked her. I think she was one of the first people out. Biden himself actually struggled in the Democratic primaries at first. Remember, there was an incident in New York with the mail-in voting. It was New York, or it was Iowa. It was one of these states at the beginning of the Democratic primary where they had a huge mishap with the mail-in voting. And then after that, Biden started gaining ground. Do you remember that, anyone? So that's a question. I don't think at all that he was more popular. Here's the other thing. When you go to Pew Research, prides itself on being just a great source of data and research and not having any biases. They have a good study regarding surveys that they did after the election. And I'm going to read some of these things, and it really makes you think. So I've come up with this hypothesis. There were three different agendas, or three different narratives that were created regarding the 2020 election. You had a pre-election narrative by the mainstream media, and that pre-election narrative was based on the mail-in voting, and they were trying to calm people and push on people that mail-in voting was okay. A lot of the concern was that it was rigged or that it would be corrupt. So that narrative that they formed actually said that that mail-in voting was not going to be corrupt, and it was not going to favor a political party. It said that just as many Republicans would use it as Democrats would. There's a few different articles saying this is leading up. This is earlier in 2020, leading up to the election, basically just trying to calm the fears behind the mail-in ballots. So that's the first narrative. Pre-election, it was not a partisan, or a particular party was not going to benefit more than the other. Then you had the narrative built during the election. If you remember when the election happened, Trump, and I use Georgia as an example, but in other states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, I don't think he was ever ahead in Arizona, but what was another state he was ahead in and lost? Michigan and Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yep. He ended up losing those, Georgia in particular, a few days later. The problem, though, is during that few-day period, Trump had not just a small lead, but a major lead, like a massive lead. And then the narrative changed from before the election of it's not going to benefit one party or the other to Democrats are receiving the majority of mail-in ballot votes, and we're waiting for those to be counted. So you can't count on Trump receiving many more votes. He's already got his votes from the box office or from the ballot boxes, and from here on out, excuse me, from here on out, Biden will receive the majority of votes because of the mail-in ballots. So they contradicted themselves. And that's exactly what happened. Now, it seemed feasible at the time because the other narrative was that Democrats tended to care about or have more concerns regarding the pandemic. And because they have more concerns regarding the pandemic, they were going to utilize mail-in ballots. Well, guess what, people? That actually turned out to be bullshit for a couple different reasons. Here's one. If you look at vaccination rates, I would say that getting the vaccine, for the most part, is a good demonstration that you're somewhat concerned with COVID. In an article I wrote, and I've talked about it here before, the data shows that is actually not a partisan problem. It is not conservatives that are refusing to get vaccinated. It's both parties, Democrat and Republican. It's not a partisan problem. In fact, the lowest vaccination rates are among the African American community, which Biden received about 90% of those votes. Now, going back to the African American community, think about this. I was under the assumption until the other day that when it came to mail-in voting, that black people would actually utilize that more. Sorry, guys, COVID's getting me. But I was wrong. In fact, the black community used the mail-in absentee voting the least out of everyone. Which means that it wasn't just Biden's voters or the Democrats that were taking advantage of that system. Actually, it was a higher percentage of Trump voters than was originally thought used absentee ballots. Here's the other thing. Around half of Joe Biden's voting base that did mail-in ballots said that they had previously voted using the absentee ballots in prior elections. Out of the people that voted for Trump that did the absentee ballots, only about 30% had actually utilized that before. So that means Trump actually had Trump's backing had more people that were using that system, new to that system. I hope everyone's following along with this. But the next thing is Biden voters for the mail-in ballots were more likely to turn in the ballots early than Trump voters. I bring that up because, again, Trump received heavy leads in states like Georgia, and then Biden, caught up. Like, it was crazy at the end. After a few days, they finally counted those mail-in ballots. Well, if Biden's voters were turning in those ballots early, and especially earlier than Trump voters were turning in the ballots, and they were both utilizing the system, then why didn't Trump get more of a share of those votes later on in the later days of the vote count? In fact, if you look at a graph for Georgia, he didn't get hardly any. It just makes you think. There was one county in Georgia that had 99%. And when I say 99%, I mean like maybe 3 or 4 people in the whole county above the age of 18 weren't registered to vote. So 99%, almost 100% of the population in one county in Georgia, and it's a small county, but it's not like, it's several thousand, like maybe 20,000 people. Almost 100% of the population over 18 was registered to vote. There's no way. There's no way. And these are just things that I'm finding, okay? Again, I'm going to go more into this as I write. But you have to ask yourself, here's the other thing. In 2016 in Georgia, a lot of people actually voted Libertarian. And I think that they did that because they didn't like Trump and they didn't like Clinton. That goes back to my question of, was Biden a better candidate than Clinton? Like, did people like Biden more than Clinton? Maybe so. But did they like Biden more than Obama? Hell no. Not even in the same world. I don't like Obama, but Obama's better than Biden. He's far more articulate. All of the libertarian votes in Georgia that happened in 2016 were almost non-existent in 2020. But still, the state of Georgia had a 900,000 vote difference from 2016 to 2020. I think the biggest difference ever before that was like 120,000 votes in a year. There was over 900,000 new voters in the state of Georgia. There was only 5 million, just under 5 million votes total. So almost 20% more votes in the state of Georgia. Now, again, some people could come back and say that, oh, well, that's, it was a popular election. Mail-in ballots, people had convenience to come and vote and stuff like that. Yes, but you have to take in the behavior aspect of this. When you look at the research by the Pew Research Foundation here, what were the reasons why, and this goes to the intent argument I always talk about. It's all about intent. You have to determine a voter's intent, not on why they voted, but why they voted the way they did vote, as in the method they used. Why would someone use mail-in ballots? We were told that they would use mail-in ballots because they were concerned about COVID. The Pew Research Center actually contradicted themselves in the study because originally it says that roughly half of the voters in 2020, actually the total voters in the whole country, used the absentee ballot system. That may be true. They also went to say that the majority of them used that system because they were concerned about the pandemic. But later on in the study, they asked the total amount of voters what their biggest concern, or what concern they had that caused them to use the method of voting the way they did. So only 24% of total voters in the whole United States considered the pandemic as an influencer on why they would use like an absentee balloting or going to do in-person voting or early voting. Only 24% considered that to be the cause on what swayed their decision. In fact, the reason why people did the absentee ballots was actually because of convenience. 66% of people voted the way they did because of convenience purposes. That's actually far different than what we were told. So, if it wasn't COVID, like we were told, then that beats the narrative of the mail-in ballots should be favored towards the Democrats. And you also can't explain why someone who is libertarian, in my opinion, would actually favor voting for Trump than Joe Biden. Here's the other thing I gotta figure out. When you look at the voting demographics on age, income class, education achieved, on who votes for who, it tends to be that higher income and more educated people supposedly voted for Joe Biden. I can't believe that because all of Joe Biden's policy in the election that he ran on penalized those same very people. You would imagine that would be the lower income, less educated people that actually voted for Joe Biden. Because he ran on his platform saying he was going to protect the lower middle class. That was his whole goal. His whole entire platform. But yet, he received more of the upper middle class and educated vote. Doesn't make sense. all it takes, like I said, it takes 100. It took 100, just over 150 votes per county in Georgia. 150 votes more proportionately than the average amount that Democrats normally receive in those counties to turn that election around and have Joe Biden win. 150 votes per county. That's it. That could show up in these small Trump counties where Biden, they had negative population growth. And not only did they have negative population growth, but they had negative population growth going back almost 20 years. There were, I think it's Atkinson County or Appalling County, one of those that starts with an A. The most votes, like increase in votes per year that they ever had was like 1,000. They went from like 6,000 votes 1 year total in the whole county to like 7,000. Last year they had almost 9,000. In these small rural counties, you're telling me that 3,000 people just, showed up and voted in this county. That's fine, Eric. But, these are just things that I'm digging into and trying to answer. I'm trying to establish intent. I'm trying to look at trends. And honestly, these trends are actually supporting some of my theory on if it was, a fraudulent election, how it could have been done. And they did it in the smaller and medium-sized Trump-heavy counties because no one would ever look there. Who cares if Biden gets 300 more votes because Trump got 400 more votes in that county? The problem is that Biden was outpacing Trump proportionately in all of those counties. Or not all of them, but a vast majority of them. In every county that had 30% more voters between 2016 and 2020, Joe Biden had a substantial increase in the proportionate amount of votes. A substantial increase. Like, I'm talking about 10 times more. He went from Clinton received, a drop of 0.5% less than what Joe Biden did in his prior election to that. She got a little bit less votes, as opposed to the average. Then Joe Biden would get like 8 times more. He got like 8 or 9% more votes in that particular county than Hillary Clinton did. And like 6 or 7% more than Obama did both terms, and going all the way back to Bill Clinton, who won the state 20 years ago. Georgia had a very strong trend of going heavier Republican all the way up until 2020. Trump got far more votes in a lot of his counties, than he did in 2020. In 2016, he crushed Clinton in these counties. Now you could say, well, yeah, that was, his first election, and they just didn't like Clinton. The problem is that Romney crushed Obama in those same counties, and McCain crushed Obama in those same counties, and Bush crushed John Kerry in those same counties, and Bush crushed Gore in those same counties. Again, all the way, there was a trend where Republicans were getting more votes in these small Republican counties proportionally every year up until last year or 2 years ago. It's interesting. Then the next things you have to consider are we got to look at some of the known variables. One, Trump was very active on his campaign, especially in the South. He took multiple visits to Georgia. Everywhere he went, he filled football stadiums worth. We're talking about tens of thousands of people. 60, 50, 70, 80,000 plus people at the rallies. COVID or not. I live in Tennessee, and I like to fish, and I would take my boat out, and there would be literal boat parades in honor of Donald Trump, running in support of Donald Trump. I never once ever saw any Biden sticker on any car or right in front of any house. I never saw even you would drive by and you would see Trump apparel, like a store, a side, set up on the side of the road selling Trump apparel. Go to Seed to Table in Naples, Florida. It's Trump. It's a fancy grocery store, just Trump everywhere in there. Trump was huge in the South, especially in Georgia. Biden went to Georgia one time, literally like the day or two before the election occurred. And he spoke to his own demographic. And Biden was not active hardly at all the entire campaign thing. The only time you ever really heard him spoke was on short clips that were reruns on the news. And we even got gypped out of one of the debates. Now, the first debate was a shit show for both of them. We can all agree on that. They didn't do the second one, and then the third one they finally did. So we didn't really see enough of Biden. The reason I'm bringing that up is because we are under the impression that people voted against Trump and didn't vote for Biden, but actually Pew Research says that about half of the people that voted for Biden voted for him because of his policies. And when we're talking about half of the people, we're talking about Biden got 81 million votes. Trump got 74 million. There were so many more people that voted in this election. So it's not like Trump lost votes and lost support. No, Trump gained support. Not only did he gain support, he blew any Republican as far as total votes out of the water. John says the left argues that low turnout at Joe's rallies didn't translate to votes. Raccoon says Potato Head had a few in a parking lot. Yeah, in those little circles. The problem is, John, my problem with that is it wasn't televised on social media. Did you ever see, maybe once or twice, a Joe Biden rally that was live streamed on social media? Did you ever see a whole rally from Joe Biden on social media? Anywhere. You only got little clips and sound bites. He obviously did them, but only the people that were there really saw the full thing. So what I'm getting at is maybe if Trump only had 10 people at his rallies, he could have gotten away with that excuse because they were sharing the rallies on Facebook, on Fox News. They were showing the whole freaking thing. Like, even if no one showed up in person, I was still able to see his message at any time on demand via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever at that time. He was everywhere. Biden was nowhere. I could not have told you what Biden ran on other than what the left's overall agenda was, because I just assumed that he was in support of whatever they wanted him to do, which has been true. But other than that, like, he's been in office for 47 years. He was president under Obama. I expected it to be just like that, which was not very favorable. It was so unfavorable that people actually went and voted for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton because of that reason. People say that the pandemic, the way Trump handled the pandemic, was the big, contributor to the results of the election. More people were confident that Biden would handle it better than Trump. The problem is that is true. A good portion of people that were asked were more confident in Biden handling the COVID-19 pandemic better than Trump. However, when it came to decisions regarding the economy, about the same proportion of people favored Trump over Joe Biden. While the COVID-19 pandemic and the economy may be two separate issues. They kind of go hand in hand because they shut the economy down during COVID. And Biden ran on the fact that he wasn't going to shut the economy down. He was going to shut the virus down. Obviously, no one knows the future because hindsight looking back, we all look stupid for if anyone even believed that for a second. But it just goes to show that some of the reasonings behind people's votes isn't what it seemed to be. And again, I haven't looked in other states like Arizona or Pennsylvania. I'm looking at Georgia, and I'm writing this on Georgia. And honestly, I have enough to write a book. I'm gonna write a book on Nancy Pelosi stuff, and I'm gonna write a book on this topic. I'm gonna write the article, but then it's gonna be followed up with a book, an ebook. It's crazy how much there is. And yeah, maybe I'm just spewing, ideas. That's all I'm doing. I'm just saying that if it was stolen, this is how I believe they did it. Because they did it in a way using all the stuff that we think they did with the absentee ballots, with maybe the Dominion voting machines, all the different things that they could have done that everyone speculates on. I'm just saying that they did it in places that we didn't bother to look. Everyone was so focused on the Fulton counties or the Gwinnett counties, these large populated counties that went real heavy in favor of Biden. I'm thinking, well, we could have expected that. That was expected. In fact, Trump did slightly better in those counties than I thought he would. It's in the counties that Trump does so well in that no one would ever look and even take the time to consider. And it's amazing what I'm finding. Obviously, statistically, nothing has been proven statistically impossible, but a lot of it has been proven to be statistically improbable. And it moves towards that being statistically impossible when you take into consideration population trends in the counties. Here's the other thing. For Georgia to have had over 900,000 more votes, like 20% more votes than they've ever had in the past, and to break a trend, because I would say the Clinton-Trump election was very popular as well. We've established that COVID really wasn't as big of a player as we thought it was. And the only other thing is that there was a mass population shift from places like California and these blue states to places like Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. But my problem with that is when you look at the reasons why someone would move out of those states, you don't get Biden's support out of those people. Those state migrants that are coming to Tennessee and Florida and Texas would actually be in favor of Trump because they're leaving those states because they don't like Democratic policy. One of the biggest reasons, other than the COVID restrictions, would be the state and local taxes in states like California and New York. When you look at why, if you didn't want to pay the state taxes in California and New York, why would you move to Georgia that also has a state tax? Why wouldn't you move to Tennessee or Florida or Texas where you don't pay any state income tax? And when you take that into consideration, then you look back, yeah, Texas was closer when it came to maybe going blue, but it still went red, and Florida still went red, and Tennessee definitely went red. There was no demographic shift really in those states, but there wasn't Georgia, the one state that has a state income tax. So why could you have the theory that, a lot of Democrats moved out of the Democratic states opposing Democratic policy and moved to the one state in the South that has Democratic policy as opposed to the other states that are popular to move to? You wouldn't. So, again, these are questions I'm asking myself as I'm going down this list and writing this article. And I on my paper here, I have, what's up, John? I have some, statistics. Let's see what else I've missed. Let me turn the page. I had a lot written down. So, you got to look at changes in voting registrations. You have to look at let's see. There was one. Where was it? It was 86% of voters confident in Trump. No. Let's see. I kind of went over all that. There was one stat that I'm missing that really got me, and I can't remember what it was. It's I have it written down on the computer, but not in my notes here. But it had to do with. I want to say it had to do with. Oh, how many people favored Biden's policy? And I think I actually talked about that. But it goes to show you there's a lot of questions. And when you take in the variables of, no one showed up at Biden rallies. He didn't promote anything. He was not very popular in the primaries to begin with until the end. His running mate that he chose was one of the most unpopular candidates that no one liked. He didn't really have a platform that anyone really agreed with. And Trump was just packing the house, and he was everywhere. Here's the other thing. How often do you think someone will vote? This is the one that got me. This is what it was. How often do you think, if you received a ballot in the mail or when you go to vote in person, you don't just vote for the electorates for the president, you also vote for any other election that's taking place, maybe a Senate or a representative election that's going on. It's all in the same area. What's up, Eric Green? Do you know that there are actually people that, like counties like for Trump that voted more in favor of Biden than they did before in the 2016 elections and prior elections? They went heavy Democrat in 2020. Yet the senators and representatives in those districts received the same proportionate votes as they did in the prior elections. The only way to do that means that someone only voted for the presidential electorate and did not vote for any of the other people on the same ballot. They just filled out a portion of the ballot and fucking sent it in. Who does that? It's very rare when a county will go blue for the representative or the Senate, but red for the president, or vice versa. So, and again, John DeVito and John Gale and Eric Green, and I don't look. I know I'm asking questions and I'm just bringing up stuff that I have been researching, but tell me, like, am I making valid points here? Like, with my hypothesis on this, it's a little bit different than what you hear on the news. Because I think on the news they focus on the way that they cheated as far as the absentee ballots and the dead voters and all that stuff. I'm using that, but I'm just saying I'm looking at where it could have been done and where it could have been done in a way that it would never be caught. But I've tried to remain neutral. I don't ever give my personal opinion on what I truly believe. I think you guys can see where I stand. It's just the one topic I just don't come out blatantly, obviously, and say. But I do say I'm open to everything. Obviously I am, because I'm writing so much, putting so much time and effort into it. But, what's up, Caps? It's amazing. And I thought about this last year, but no one ever talked about it. Like, why wouldn't you look in the places that like the least places you would least expect it? Here's the other thing. A lot of states have allowed absentee balloting. I've looked at the state laws. Places like Pennsylvania and Georgia, you can vote. You can do what's called, there's 3 different kinds of absentee ballots. You have to have either a legitimate reason to have an absentee ballot, or they have no reason at all. And then you have states like Hawaii and I think Washington and a few of those where they literally immediately just mail the ballots to every registered voter. Now, that's something they're trying to get done federally with this new voting bill. And I'm about to go into that after this because it's crazy with that. But a lot of the states implemented to where you didn't need an excuse to receive the absentee ballot. So that's kind of where you're running into and where some of the problems lied. You know, where you had states like Pennsylvania that were implementing some of this legislation just ahead of the election, and they were, is arguably unconstitutional. And in this Pew Research, because they have a lot of information, I found another interesting survey question that completely contradicts the whole need for the voting. That was the John R. Lewis voting rights bill. Completely wipes out the need in the whole agenda of that. Like, the majority of Biden voters said that they were very pleased with the convenience of the election and how it was run. Not pleased with the results. They were pleased at how easy it was to vote. The majority of African Americans, like 96%, said they had absolutely no problem voting. No problem. Now, African Americans did say that they had, on average, longer waiting times, but the reason for that is because I think a lot of them lived in cities, so the precincts would have more people going to them because the black people out in rural communities had the same, if not less, wait times than white people. But it was very easy. In fact, there was very favorable answers when it came to the convenience and process of voting and how happy they were with being able to vote, which completely knocks the whole voter suppression argument out the window. And so much so, when you read the Pew Research paper on this, thanks, Caps. When you read the Pew Research paper on this, you're like, I'm sitting here like I was up really late last night. Caps knows I was on that New Zealand show and stuff but because I was working on this, and I'm sitting there reading. I'm like, God, I have another article to write right here on this whole how the John R. Lewis thing is bullshit. Because most of the people were actually happy and didn't feel any kind of suppression whatsoever. And John Gale had brought this up on his show, and I don't know why it took so long for me to bring this up till now. But during Joe Biden's little makeshift State of the Union address a couple weeks ago, he was asked a very good question by a reporter that he couldn't answer. And the question was, if the voting rights bills don't pass, does that mean that the future elections will be fraudulent? These upcoming midterm elections will be fraudulent. Now, John Gale, I don't believe he gave a direct answer. I think he said, what did he say? Someone, I think John Gale knows exactly what he said. But he did not say, yes, it would be fraudulent. You know why he didn't say they would be fraudulent? Because if he said that they're fraudulent without the voting rights bill, then that means he's admitting to the 2020 election that got him elected to be fraudulent as well. He's saying that there's a risk that could have been fraudulent if November elections can be fraudulent if they don't pass the voting bill. Because they're hammering how voters are suppressed. How is no one turning this script on them saying, if voters are so suppressed, how are you able to outperform Trump and just completely destroy the regular margin of error, statistically speaking, in states like Georgia? It doesn't make sense. Either it wasn't fraudulent and it won't be fraudulent in the future, or it will be fraudulent in the future, and it was fraudulent in the past as well. There's no this or that. It's either it's both. Either it's fake every time, or it's not fake at all.